I'm traveling, guys. So
Greetings and salutations. This is Remembering Runoko. It's a tribute to Dr. Runoko Rashidi. And we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn right now. I am joined by three of my colleagues who made a magnificent journey to the country of Egypt in 2019. We spent 2 weeks in Egypt and then, hold on. Okay, I have a Bluetooth speaker that is on right now, I think, and it's picking up what we're doing. So let me turn this on. Okay. So back to the business at hand. We spent 2 weeks in Egypt and we spent another week in the Sudan. Our brother here, Kofi Kepera, was with us in Sudan. He was not with us in Egypt, but I also have with me Mr. Robert Horkham, who is a chaplain, among other things. And I also have one of my best friends in life, Brother Greg Pickett, who you see behind the wheel. He's actually headed to a little soiree, but he decided to honor us with his presence today and give some reflections on his time in Egypt and Dr. Rashidi. So thank you to you all for joining us. I will also let you know that we did reach out to a few other folks who were on that journey with us. They were unable to make it, but with who we have right now, I think we will do justice to the subject matter at hand. So welcome to the broadcast, folks.
Thank you.
I
thank
think
you.
Robert, yes, and Kofi, who right now is in Singapore. So it's
Yes, sir.
8 o'clock in the morning where he is right now, something like that. He
Indeed.
must be a morning person because he was the first one on the call.
Yeah. I'm an early bird. I'm an early bird.
Yeah. Well, actually, I take that back. Greg was actually on the call at 7:25, so I give credit where credit is due.
Okay.
But Kofi was on and he was ready to go. So we really appreciate you being on with us. As we start this tribute, I just want to make sure that I let everybody know who Dr. Runoko Rashidi was or is. He is one of the greatest scholars that we've ever known. He has and had an extensive memory. He came to Cleveland several times to do presentations at a venue that I have called Larchmere Arts. And usually we would do two presentations, one night and one the second night. And then he would take time to go to the Cleveland Museum of Art and visit the Egyptian exhibition that they've had there for years. So Cleveland was one of his favorite places, and we were so honored. I'm just going to give you a little background. We're going to share some photographs. I have a little video that I want to share with you. But I just want you to know that Dr. Rashidi, again, he was one of our greatest scholars. You know, we look at people like Sheikh Anta Diop and John G. Jackson, and I think somebody may have mentioned, well, nobody mentioned it, but I'm thinking of John Henry Clark, Asa Hilliard, you know, some of these great scholars who were intrinsically tied to our history and our culture. And Dr. Rashidi was one of those who went through great lengths to document our existence and to share that existence with people around the world. So he wrote books, he conducted tours. I mean, he was one of the busiest scholars on our planet. And I think we're indebted to him for what he brought to us. So I just wanted to get that out. And at this time, I will welcome any additional opinions about Dr. Rashidi and what he meant to us. You want to start, Robert?
Absolutely. I guess I would start at the very beginning, meaning I had a quest to want to go to the mother country and did not know how I was going to get there, to be quite honest with you. But the calling was there. And I do believe that the ancestors connected me to Dr. Rashidi. Did not know him, got paid for the trip, got to the airport, didn't know anyone, but something told me to go. And that's what I did. And my first interaction with this man was a man of brilliance, having been a teenager from the early 70s, one of the things that we were told in our culture that, our history began, with the enslavement in this country. So to meet a brilliant mind who said, no, our roots go deep, not just back into Africa, but over the world. One of the things that Dr. Rashidi had is this book. It's called My Global Journey in Search of African Presence. I would recommend that everyone get a copy of this book, because when you read it, you hear his voice. It's not just in Africa, but it's all over the world that he is saying we are somebody. We came from somebody. We have a history. We were the leaders and not the followers. He opened my eyes to many, many, many things, and I will forever be grateful to this man. I'll stop there.
All right. Kofi, how about you, brother?
Yeah, well, actually, the first time I ended up traveling with Ancestor Runoko was the year before to Egypt in 2018. So that was my first time going with him. And, it was a similar thing like Brother Robert, where, I wasn't really sure of how I was going to get to the motherland. But having seen, and interacted with Ancestor Runoko's Facebook page prior to engaging him in conversation, created that calling for me. And so as we developed a connection and everything and started talking to each other more and more, and realizing we had some things, in common in terms of what we like to study, things we like to read and whatnot, that calling became a shout, right? And so I ended up, signing up for the Egypt trip in 2018 and went with him. And from there, it was like a house on fire, brother. I mean, Ancestor Runoko gave me that nudge that I needed. I've always loved teaching. That was something I was doing since I was my young son's age at 8. All my cousins and friends can remember, oh yeah, Kofi was always playing school with us. And now that I have all this knowledge of our culture that Ancestor Runoko helped set me on my way with, now I'm spreading that. I'm doing what he was doing, kind of following in his footsteps in that regard, and just, doing the mission. But I'm eternally grateful for him giving me that push, because without that, brother, I don't know what I would be doing in terms of our culture.
Kofi, there was a moment we were at one of the historic places that we went to in the Sudan. And I vividly remember in that moment thinking that the baton was being handed off to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay, brother. I definitely agree in that sense that, I think in terms of scholarship, of him, passing that baton of the mission of scholarship, which all of us need to engage in. We don't have to be literal scholars. I tell young brothers and sisters that I talk to all the time, like, you don't have to be, a quote unquote expert as, Europeanly defined. You just need to be, you need to have a love and a hunger of learning, number one. And then number two, dig into our culture, into our roots, right? And so as long as you have those two things working for you, you're going to be all right. And I think with Ancestor Runoko, I think in those moments, and we had a lot of conversations where I just felt like, yeah, I got to do something now. Now that I'm learning all this from him, and now that he's given me this gift of sharing these experiences and this knowledge with me, what do I do with all this? Right? I got to do something. So definitely in that regard, I feel for sure 100% he was passing that baton of scholarship. Like, young man, you need to get busy. Yeah. So that's exactly what I've been busy doing, collecting, the knowledge, the information. Got that first book out of the way, working on the second one now. So, hopefully I'm making them smile at me a little bit.
Yeah, and speaking of books, the book that you put together is a magnificent publication. So, what
Thank
follows,
you,
I'm expecting a certain level of scholarship, and I'm sure you'll hit hit the mark.
Oh yeah. Oh
The
yeah.
other thing that I wanted to say is I'm glad to hear that you made the trip to Egypt with him, so you had the experience that we had with him, because
Mhm.
he took us everywhere. And the real irony is that now when people visit Egypt, they don't get the benefit of the scholarship from our folks. They're
Mhm.
gatekeeping in a way that is depriving people of the truth, and it's really a sad thing to see and to hear. You may or may not know Professor Manu Ampim. He's at
Yeah.
Contra Costa College, and he just
Mhm.
got back. Actually, I interviewed him last weekend, so he was fresh from Ethiopia and Egypt. He had been in Egypt for I think a month or so, and he spent a whole month in Ethiopia. And he I mean, he was still full from the experience. So it's rewarding to know that somebody is carrying the work forward. And Professor Ampim, not only is he a historian, but he's also a primary researcher. So
Right.
he's gathering information, and then he's sharing his findings, and he's writing, and he said that he had a documentary crew with him there. So we can expect to see something visual and oral coming out of that experience. Don't want to leave my brother Greg out, but Greg, if you want to unmute your mic and talk to us about your reflection on connecting with Brother Runoko and time that you spent in Egypt.
Well, my curiosity came from, and first of all, I want to thank my best friend. He gives me, "Do you want to go to Africa?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah." So, but the trip to Egypt really opened up my eyes. In America, um, there's so many diluted lies about who we are, what we are, where we began. And the Egypt trip just made it all make sense for me. Um, especially from the religious aspect of America. Um, there's just so many, again, lies that have been told to control Black Americans as well as others, but specifically Black Americans. Even while we were in Egypt, some of the tour guides or the what was it the some of the state officials were attempting to mute Dr. Runoko in telling us the truth about what was going on, or what the symbols and what the images meant. And again, I tell people I don't mean to step on your toes, or talk, or offend you about your religion, but there's just been so many lies told about who we are as Africans, uh, from our origins. And again, our origins did not start with slavery here in America, but again, we are kings and queens, and so much of our power has been muted. And that was one of the things that I learned while I was in Egypt. Ghana also shed some light on that as well in terms of our strength and our power. Um, I recommend anyone who has the opportunity to go on an exploration. Uh, I mean, even as a tourist, but we went on an exploration of Egypt, and it just, again, it changed my life. It changed my perceptions. It gave me basically the foundation of the truth of who we are.
Yeah. So I will co-sign what you said, because there's the view that they will give you, and then there's the view that you get from the documented evidence. And as
Right.
we were saying before, they're really trying to whitewash Egypt. I will never forget, as a student at Kent State University taking an honors history class, and my professor told me that white people built the pyramid. And I'm young in scholarship, but I'm not so dumb that I don't know that it was Africans that built the pyramids, and they want to put it on aliens and anybody but us.
Yep.
But the documentation is there in all those historic places. So, you know, they can recolor them as much as they want, but there's already documentation that has been preserved by those of us who have been doing the research. So you can do like they're trying to do in America and rewrite American history, but the word is out, the secret is out, and the masses are beginning to wake up to the truth. So, and I also need to point out that my good friend here, just based on my invitation, not only did he go to Egypt, but he mentioned it and it got garbled. You didn't hear it, but he also went to Ghana in the same year. So we spent weeks in Ghana, came back to Cleveland, and then months later we were in Egypt. He wasn't able to take the Sudan experience, which I got to tell you, Robert, I enjoyed the Sudan experience to a much greater extent than I enjoyed Egypt. You know, the difference between the two places was the people.
Yes.
You know, everywhere you go in Egypt, they're standing around with their hands out. My brother, let me give you a gift. You take the
For
gift.
1995.
But no, you get something free up front, but after you take that free gift, you're going to have a hard time separating yourself from somebody who wants to sell you something.
Exactly. Exactly.
You take a picture of somebody, they got the hand out. You know, you take a picture of someone in Sudan and they're thanking you. So it was a different experience. And then the other difference that was obvious is that we rolling around Kemet on a Mercedes bus. When we get to Sudan, we riding around in 15-year-old Toyota Land Cruisers.
So and going through crazy checkpoints.
And so it was a different experience, but it was just a week. But you know, I can never forget driving across expansive stretches of desert, and there's nothing. There's no roads, there's no path, there are no lights, there's nothing out there. And these brothers knew how to get to those places, and they took care of us, man. I don't know if y'all understand what it's like. The last night, and I don't remember which of you took the luxury experience and which of you decided to camp out in Merroway. Robert,
there were three options. There was the camping out, there was a luxury experience, and then there was this other little place where you could get a bed, and it looked like a little fort area. Okay. And myself and I think it was, I can't remember, one of the ladies, we did that. You know, a lot of you guys camped out, and then the sisters, along with Dr. Runoko, went into that really luxurious hotel paradise place in the middle of nowhere. You know,
yeah, the royalty house there.
Yeah, but you know what was really amazing? Those people were black as coal and beautiful. I have never seen in my life such beauty as I've seen in Sudan. The Sudanese women, oh my goodness gracious. And then the way they carried themselves. You know, they didn't show all of this flesh or anything like that, but they were beautiful. Oh my goodness gracious.
Hey, Brother Vince, do you remember that elder who we were at that like the little truck stop spot? I think we were having like some refreshments there, and this elder showed up, and he went all the way back to his house and came back in his Sunday's best, if you will, just to take pictures with all of us. And I remember you taking that picture of me with him kneeling beside him like that. And I was like, yeah, that was dope, brother. That was dope.
Hey, gentlemen.
He was so excited.
Hey, gentlemen, I hate to interrupt, but I have reached my destination. But what I will say about that trip, none other is the brother Harkham is someone that I have a lifetime shared experience with And I will never forget that. He was one of the reasons that as challenging as that Egypt trip was, he was one of the bright spots of that trip, and I will never forget that man as long as I live. He's a great man, and I want to say that before I go.
Ashe, brother. Ashe.
Ashe.
All
And
right.
I heartily agree, Brother Greg. I heartily agree.
Yeah,
Most
I
definitely.
would say the same for all of you.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yes.
I met kindred people. It's the best way for me to say it.
Yeah.
It was if I've known you, all my life. We were supposed to meet. I knew we were supposed to meet. But listen, I wanted to show you something before you go. These are all the tickets. I don't know if I can show it real good, but these are all the tickets of all of the places that Runoko took us to in Egypt.
Oh
All
wow.
I
There
Well,
you
can't.
let me
go.
say this. It was my intention to do that, and I still got my tickets,
All right.
but I love
Okay.
what you've done.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
nice. That
I
looks
was like,
beautiful.
oh my goodness, and I can sit back and I can remember, when I saw the Gaza Plateau, or when the various places that I went to, but it was, and one of the things that I would want to say is, it seemed that every time Runoko took the trip, he got joy out of us, out of the experience of seeing us reconnect to home. I remember one trip I took with him. I woke up early in the morning and we were in Kenya, and we was in this hotel which was made out of logs of wood, and on the second level was this large picture glass window, and it overlooked the water hole. And I got up early one morning to go look, and who's sitting there looking out? And he's looking at Mount Kenya, this Runoko, and he's reflecting back on just his life in Africa, and it was just such a joy to see that he got so much out of us, even though it may have been his 8th, 9th, 10th time visiting that location. And I love the fact that he also made part of the journey a lecture, and we had to sit down and listen to his lecture, and that was part of the joy of being able to know that this wasn't just you're going to go here and see this and see that, but I'm going to put something inside of you. I'm going to deposit some wisdom inside of you, and I want you to understand this. I mean, he took us in Egypt. He took us into a tomb that wasn't even open to the public, but we had access to this one tomb that wasn't even open.
Absolutely.
And I was like, wow. And I saw the respect of the guides, that literally there was at one point the guide sort of took a back step to him because of his knowledge of what they were showing us. He was teaching them in the process. I was like, this man is amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah.
To me, I experienced joy. It was like joy, in the real sense of it, that men and brothers can connect on this level without all of this craziness going on, but we can connect and be ourselves and see ourselves,
Yeah.
heard and seen. Amazing.
Well, the difference between him, all right, Brother Greg,
All
the
right, Brother
difference
Greg.
between him and those others who were presenting the information is that they were just reading a script. Brother Runoko was reflecting on his scholarship, not a script. So that's why they were learning from him, because he knew and understood things that they had no grasp or awareness of, And again, it's really sad that folks are being silenced. And here's the other thing, and I think I picked this up from Professor Ampim. They're not only talking about shutting you down on those historic places. They don't want you at the hotel giving lectures.
Well, they don't want us nowhere, yeah, anywhere doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's causing problems.
absolutely crazy to think that you can be in a private place and have someone still attempt to censor you. That's just, it's tragic as far as I'm concerned. I actually have a friend and colleague who is going over to Egypt this year. He might be actually doing 2 tours. I know he has one coming up in the next couple of months. And I wonder what it's going to be like for him because, Anthony Browder did not go to Egypt this year. I think he decided to go to London and Paris and visit museums as opposed to going to Egypt. That's the level that things have reached. I don't know what Ashra Kwesi is doing, but I know when he goes, he usually takes groups of 40, 50, 60 people.
Yeah, they're
So
big.
and he's doing the lectures. So if you're saying now that you can go over there and bring all those people, but then they have to listen to somebody who's giving them a script and not speaking from 30, 40 years of experience, that's an absolute tragedy. So one thing that crossed my mind as a suggestion or a recommendation to people, if you're thinking about going to Egypt, study first. Read first. So that when you get there, you're equipped to read between the lines and decipher the gatekeeping that's taking place. Another thing that Professor Ampim shared with me was his disappointment with the museum. When we were there, they were just in the building stages of it.
Yep.
But now, I think they've had a soft open. So there might be some places that aren't open in the museum, but there are different places that you go into the museum. And I think what he shared was that it wasn't done in a way that allows you to go through that museum in chronological order. So
they're not going to do that.
Yeah, so it's like from a historian's perspective, they got it all wrong.
Wow.
But if your agenda is one of cultivating chaos and confusion, then mission accomplished. If you don't want Africans and people of African descent to know that they're the ones who are responsible for all those places, mission accomplished. If you want to muddy the waters by focusing on the European influence and the European presence and not focus on the African presence, mission accomplished. So yeah, that's what's going on right now. So we'll have to see what happens. Brother Robert, are there any places that stood out to you on the Egyptian leg of this journey?
I think one of the first things that actually stood out to me was to actually see the pyramid. And what stood out to me with the pyramid, especially the Great Pyramids, was the mathematics behind it. In school, you was always taught something like Pythagorean's theory, right angles, coming out of the Greek. But before the Greeks, all of that knowledge is right there in Egypt. So I saw the knowledge of, the mathematics of building the structure so that it doesn't fall down. Even when I looked at the step pyramids, I think what really stood out to me, even though they was in the middle of moving things around, was some of the pieces that I saw in the Cairo Museum. Because the original paint was still on them, and the paint showed them as looking just like us. And that to me was just confirmation of who we are and the greatness of who we come from and our heritage and the wisdom of the ancestors to put something in a form that you could not destroy, that would be around for centuries to come, so that when people try to whitewash it or change it up, it's not possible. It is not possible. It is not possible for you to go to Egypt and not know that they are your people. It is not impossible for you to not see that immediately going into Egypt. And that to me was probably a aha moment for me, because in the States over here, people get really excited around the holiday time when you see the Moses movie, the Cecil B. DeMille's movie, the Moses movie, and all of that, and all of these folks, and they look like that. And then to see the actuality of walking through the museum, and for me to look at some of the mummies and say, "Wow, this sister here is braided," you know, you know, there's a pick, I know how to use an Afro pick because I need one, and just all of the splendor and all of the glory that is still there. Now there is still a portion of it that's really interesting. Traveling the Nile, for example, our first night traveling the Nile, we had a dinner there to show, and to travel the course of the Nile all the way down to some of the great monuments. And Vince, I don't you remember, we stayed at one hotel. I can't remember where it was, but I remember us getting up in the morning, and we could walk out of the backside of our hotel rooms, and the Nile River was there. And it was just like beautiful pictures that you could just take of the boats sailing down the Nile. And I was like, wow, I'm about ready to say, you know what, baby, I'm not coming back home. I hadn't found, a place that I want to stay, but it all stood out to me. And you know what? At one point I almost felt overwhelmed with the amount of information that, I needed to stay there a year or two just to start to digest and take it all in, but it was life changer for me. Yeah, it was life changer for me. And then on top of that, traveling with all of these great individuals, these great people, that even made it even much better.
There you go.
Yeah, there he goes. Look at him.
There you go.
Oh.
In his element.
Yeah.
When he got the hand up like that, he getting ready to go in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He getting ready to lay it down,
You know what? I was almost tempted to buy myself a plaid shirt because literally, the designer shirt, that's basically all that he wore,
Yeah. Hey, he kept it simple, man. He kept it simple and made it powerful.
Yeah.
So the place that you were thinking of, Robert, is Beni Hassan.
Okay.
We went to that place where they had like 30 or so different chambers, and we walked up that hill.
Uh-huh.
And then we went into the city, and we couldn't leave the hotel without a police escort. Remember that? And at the back of the hotel, because my room actually faced the river, I got up early that morning and I went out and took some shots. Yeah. I got so much stuff. I'm not able to share a lot with you tonight because I have to go through a whole bunch of old SD cards that I haven't looked at for like 4 or 5 years. But these are some of the images that I grabbed last night. So this is the old museum in Cairo.
Yeah.
And there's Greg, and then you see
that's B with the red hair.
And her sister Donna Williams.
There's Vince.
Yep. And here we are at the museum inside at the gift shop. And then we were in Cairo here, and we went to have lunch somewhere that was right next to the Nile.
Okay. Wow.
So these are pictures that you guys haven't seen. So I just wanted to make sure that I shared them with you tonight. These are the 2 elders that traveled with their daughter. And this is one of the many meals that we ate. And, it's no secret that Dr. Rashidi liked to eat. So we got to eat with him. There's our brother Joel, who I believe is in California, isn't he?
Yes.
I think he went the year before too. So I remember a lot of faces from the 2018 trip to Kemet. Yeah.
There's the Nile, and there were some beautiful flowers that were right there. There's brother John Stroman. Yep. And this is like a boardwalk right next to the river. And of course, the first night that we were in Cairo, we were actually on a cruise down the Nile, and they had some nice entertainment for us. There was
Yeah.
somebody doing some belly dancing and folks doing karaoke singing.
You, you did great. I must admit, you
It was
stepped up and you brought it alive. Yes, you did.
it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun just doing what we do. There is our guide, Brother Yasser, who he may have an awareness about this, and if he doesn't, I'm going to make sure that I send him the link to this. Also spoke to Brother Abdo El Rais.
Okay.
He wants me to come back to Egypt. I don't know how soon it will be, but I would love to have the experience as a tourist and not a documenter, because I missed so much because I was behind the camera. So
Hmm.
there's Brother John, and there was Brother Runoko in one of his frequent stops. Yep, here we are, and there you go, Brother Robert. We were
Oh yes, yes. Do you know I still have a lot of the oils that I brought there, and they still have the fragrance in them, the
yes.
sandalwood, and yeah, yeah.
I brought back 4 bottles of oil that Brother Runoko brought for people here in Cleveland, and 3 of them, including our friend Simi Davis, who may be watching us right now. She received one of those gifts, but
Mm.
there's still 1 bottle of oil that is at Larchmere Arts, waiting for its owner to be to make a connection so that she can retrieve it. So I'm gonna give her a little bit more time.
Okay. She better move. It's well
Yeah,
worth
she
it.
better move.
Uh-huh.
And here you are making
Yeah.
friends with a little fella here, a little furry friend.
Local
Uh-huh.
wildlife.
Yes, you must have had something that he wanted to eat, because he was
Uh,
definitely up on you.
mm-hmm.
Uh, we went to witness how papyrus is prepared.
Yeah.
And again, I have so much footage. I have footage of the people going through the process of doing it. And this
Hmm.
is one of those people who was demonstrating it. And this is a sunset. I do believe that is Cairo.
Yeah.
And absolutely it is, because you can see. I mean, I remember the first time, Robert. I remember the first time I saw it. It was in 1992. I
Wow.
was in Israel to shoot a documentary for Wilberforce University. And on the way back to America, I decided to stop in Egypt for 6 days. So I was there with my documentary partner, and we rented a car, and I drove up to Alexandria. And on the way, we're traveling down the road, and I look up and I see that great pyramid. And I'm telling you, brothers, I had a physical reaction. I actually had the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I got goose pimples. Never
Yeah.
had anything like that happen to me in life. But the very first time I saw that pyramid,
Mhm.
I had that reaction. And I'll tell you, in all honesty, I was a little bit disappointed when I got there, because it wasn't like it is now. There was literally no one there. They didn't have any kind of a station or a checkpoint or security that you had to walk through. You could just walk up to the pyramid and you
Mhm.
could go inside. And I went inside, and there was really nothing to see. There was just a passageway that led up to the top of the pyramid. I
Right.
found that out on the return trip, but I was expecting to see the Medu Neter in there, and I didn't see it.
Hmm.
Now that I've been back and I've had a chance to study, I know so much more now than I did then, that I couldn't appreciate what I was seeing when I was there the first time, but definitely the second time. This is a photograph of the hotel that we stayed in, that was in some place called October 6th, because something meaningful happened on that date. But this was I think it was I want to say it was a Marriott hotel, and they had a golf course next to it. So
Hmm.
we got up at the crack of dawn, and this was us as we were about to depart for that trip. So we're boarding our Mercedes bus, and you can see, I think Abdo is there, and I think you might also see Yasser there with his hat on, and we're getting on the bus. And I remember also somebody was late that morning, and they got fussed at.
Yes.
This is us at the airport in Cairo. I think we were going to fly to Aswan, I believe. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. If you still have the itinerary, we could document that. But that is one airport. And while we were at the airport, this young man was somebody who knew of Dr. Rashidi and took great pleasure in connecting with him. So here we are at another one of those places. And I want to say, y'all had to forgive my ignorance because I was behind the camera instead of in front of it. So I'm not as privy to where we were. But I want to say Abydos, if that rings a bell.
Looks like it.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And this is a slide where we're on the cruise ship having dinner. And once again, Dr. Rashidi is holding court. So we were in learning mode all the time. This is one of the museums that we visited. And when we got there, it was around sunset. So if you didn't know, I had to use a flash on this photograph.
Okay.
This is some of the things that we were seeing while we were there. And this, of course, is probably one of the most recognizable places that we visited. And this is the stuff that I passed on in my first trip to Egypt. But when I came back, I knew better. So again, I'm happy that I was able to have this experience. And I'm happy for you, Brother Kofi, because you had the same experience when you went with him in the year before.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah. So we're going to have to do some studying to know who these folks are. I think the sister, the feminine divine there, I think that is actually a representation of Aset, who people call Isis. But, you know, I'm a little frustrated with that, because if we want to honor our ancestors or those who are in our mythology, we should honor them with the African names and not the Greek names.
There you go.
This was taken from a distance, and then here we are back near the Giza Plateau, where you can see those magnificent structures. Okay, here I think we were going into one of the restaurants we visited. Of course, you can see the transportation mode. They still use horses and they still use mules over there. And again, I think these are the streets of Cairo. All right. And here, this is a scene of the Nile and one of the ships that we were on. It's either Aswan or Luxor. And the thing that I remember about them is that they were heavy cigarette smokers, man. You could not walk down the sidewalk in Aswan or Luxor and not be greeted by the smell of smoke. This, I think, was this was one of the places that we went that we took a carriage ride to get to.
Yeah, I remember that place. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that one from the year before. Yeah.
Yep. And I actually rode on the carriage with Donna, and I have video from that. And I wish I could tell you with absolute certainty what these places are, but what I'll have to do is match up the dates on these photographs and match it up to the itinerary, and then that'll tell me the places that we visited. But I just wanted folks to get a glimpse. And there's our brother Robert inside. There is Joel and Yasser, and I want to say that is Donna. Yep, that's her. And here we are,
There you go.
about to take our carriage ride to a place where people could sell us stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
I think that was the doing of our tour guide. I think
Yes.
that's their way of taking care of the folks who are along our journey.
Mm-hmm. I think that was also true with the oils that we brought. They took us to that
Yes.
particular
Yeah, yeah.
place.
Mm-hmm. Because they weren't cheap.
No, they were not. Hundreds. Yeah.
Yes. And I actually broke a bottle of one of those oils, and in it was oil of oregano. So that's the most expensive oil of oregano that I've ever had in life. And it ended up on the floor in the hotel that we stayed at
Uh,
in Khartoum.
uh,
Dr. Rashidi asked me to get a picture of this lake. I'm going to have to go back through my records and remember what this was, but it was something that was a must have. So I made sure
I
that I
think
got it.
I think that's the lake outside of Ipet Isut, Temple
Okay.
University spot. Yeah, because I remember taking a similar photo from the opposite side though, so I
Yeah.
recognize that spot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so those of you who are seeing these photographs of these pillars, I just want you to know what they represent. They represent the male principle. So figure that out. But if you look at the shape of it, you can tell exactly what it is. And if you know anything about what they call the obelisks, like the Washington monuments, they're actually called tekens in our language. And the teken is a representation of the male principle. So if you didn't know, now you know.
Now you know.
This was in one of the museums that we visited, and we visited several. This is a photograph of him when we were in Beni Hassan, seated around the table, about to have dinner and getting one of those lectures. So hope you enjoyed it, but those are some of the images that I was able to glean from one of the cards that I obtained while I was there. Kofi, are there any places that stood out to you?
Oof. I probably would have to say the one probably was I think this was at the Cairo Museum, but and again, you have to understand this is my first time being in there and seeing these things. But I remember thinking to myself, what in when I'm looking at these Afro wigs, brother, Afro wigs. Now you got to understand, seeing sisters in the States, I didn't see nothing like that. Saw a lot of wigs, but definitely not Afro wigs, right? And I remember thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. If we're gonna wear wigs, which is cool, why aren't we wearing our own natural hair as wigs? Like, why is this straight hair all the time? And I remember just staring at them for just like what seemed like 10, maybe 15 minutes, just thinking like, wow, what, I couldn't find the words to describe what I was seeing because it was just so, to me, it was just so mind-boggling in the opposite direction, right? Just you're going through all of this very rapid succession of understanding, like, why aren't we doing this, right? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we moving in that direction?
Yeah.
Versus the European direction in terms of standards of beauty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I remember that one was definitely a wow moment for me. I don't know. Like, I think for me, for those two trips, the year before in Kemet, and then especially that week in Sudan, in the 2019, the year later, it wasn't so much the locations for me as it was connecting with Ancestor Runoko. I think that's what gave those places the significance, aside from what already exists, in terms of importance for him. But for me personally, it was all about what he was telling me about it, and then the conversations that we would have around that. You know what I mean? I think the most significant event for me not necessarily the place, but the most significant event was when he referred to me as his African son. You know what I mean? That brought a lot of tears to my eyes, brother. I remember sitting in my hotel, in my room, on my bed, thinking about that. Like, man, that, because I've never had, you got to understand, with my father being European, and no black man has ever told me that before. No black man had ever told me that before, Ancestor Runoko. So, it had a powerful impact, brother. And it made me realize too, up to that point, being an African in my position, having a non-African as a father, that I started thinking about too. I know very little. I knew very little up to that point about being a black man. I knew how to be a man as America defined it, as Europeans defined it. Yeah, I could do that. But in terms of being a black man, there's a lot of credit that I give to Ancestor Runoko for that, just based on the conversations that we had. I will forever be grateful to him for that.
Yeah.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Yeah. I believe it was an anointing that he put upon you. And it was seen by a lot of us. Vincent saw it. He mentioned it. I saw it. I saw that something was transferring, and even there was something that involved you also, Vince, and that was, it was the reason why you were documenting all of this, just so that it would not get lost. So there was the ancestors were moving some things all around us. They was moving us, and they was moving people in our lives and out of our lives. And I was reading in Runoko's book, and he talked about always traveling, and after visiting one place, wanting to go to another place, and even in his end, he was traveling. And to me, I was amazed at the fact that his end was at home, not here,
Right.
at home, and
It's
I was
like Ancestor Asa.
yes. I was like, you know what? Something greater than our thinking was orchestrating all of this to put it together so that, all of this would happen, so that the baton that's being passed to you is not stagnated. It's going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
As you grow, it's going to grow. Because I think of people like even like Marcus Garvey, and the impact that he had on Runoko's life, and so much so that he names his daughter after him, that his impact on your life is going to be like that. And when you start to look at some of the people who he has interacted with over the time period, you will see how he stood on their shoulders, and that you'll be standing, the both of you, I might add, not just the both of you, will be standing on his shoulders as you move this forward. The one thing that I can say about the both of y'all that I know that is true is you're unapologetic when it comes to being who you are. And I love that about the both of you. I love that about the both of you. But
I want to share this with you, and I think that it will be meaningful to you, especially Kofi, since you've been to Ghana or you plan to live there. I was there in 2016 or 2017. I think it was 2017. Yeah, it was 2017. And we went to the enslavement dungeon at Elmina. And one of his colleagues, Nana Kra Kwamina II, also known as Dr. Kwa David Whitaker, he had us there to do a pre-dawn ceremony. So we stood next to the dungeon, and he said a prayer and poured a libation, and then we walked over to the beach next to the castle, and we threw a piece of fruit out into the water. And we were instructed to have a conversation with the ancestors. So I got an orange. I threw the orange out into the water, and I told the ancestors that I want to be a conduit. I want to bring the message of Africa to African Americans. That was part of the conversation that I had with the ancestors that morning as the sun was rising. That evening, we went back to the village of Atonkwa. And I'm online because we had Wi-Fi in the village. And I got a Facebook inbox message from Dr. Runoko Rashidi. Just out the blue. And he said, I want you to bring me to Cleveland, Ohio. That was in 2017. I brought Dr. Rashidi to Cleveland, Ohio in 2017, in 2018, and 2019. I got to know Dr. Rashidi as a brother. We had heart-to-heart conversations. So I fully agree with you, Brother Robert. You know, there was really something special, and it's something that's bigger than me. It's bigger than Kofi, but we were chosen to do what we did by the ancestors. And that's why we have to continue doing what we're doing, because we are basically following their instructions. That's why it was important for me to do this tonight. I remember somehow we connected a few weeks ago, and I shared that idea with you. You know, so now it's being memorialized. And those who weren't able to join us tonight, they'll be privy to our conversation, and we can do something in the future when we have more plans. So what I need to do is I need to put that documentary together with the footage that I shot and the images that I captured, and do something more formal than what you got today. Because I got pictures of us at the Step Pyramid. I think it was B, going down that path to get inside. It's just, it's amazing the things that we saw. I got pictures of the Step Pyramid from a distance. You see no people in these pictures. All you see is that great edifice. I got pictures on the inside where we're in at the top of it, and you can see the bats in the ceiling. The bats just hanging out, you know. We went so many places, you know, on the ships crossing that lake to get to what we saw with those 4 statues that are on the album cover that Earth, Wind, and Fire did back in the day. You know, just there's so much stuff to uncover. So yeah, I'm really anxious to put something together a lot more extensive. I didn't show you the presentation that I did in a couple of festivals and a one-person show that I did, but I'm going to work on that. And the next time we have this gathering, and I also must point out, and we didn't mention this at the top of the show, but today is his birth anniversary.
Yeah.
He would be 71 years in that body that he had, you know. But I'm sure from the place that he is now, that he's smiling and knowing that he accomplished his mission on Earth quite well. And we have the books, we got the pictures, we got the video to prove it, and that we have a responsibility to share that with the folks out there. So just know that we're going to do this again, and we're going to do it bigger and better than we did before. And perhaps we can get some of the other folks who had the experience that we had. You know, I'm sitting here thinking about the time that in Sudan, I think it was, when we had an impromptu cipher. Do you guys remember that?
Tell me more.
We had guest houses. We visited guest houses when we were in Sudan. We didn't really stay in hotels.
Yeah.
With the exception of the one in Khartoum, where we stopped the first night and we spent the last evening there after some of us roughed it in pup tents on the desert.
I
That was
remember.
nice.
So we stopped at the hotel so we at least take a shower before we got
Uh-huh.
on the plane.
Uh-huh.
But we had a cipher one evening and people were sharing their talents. So I think I did some spoken word and then
Yeah.
and maybe somebody else did some singing, but I just remember we had a good time that night.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think I remember that, Brother Vince. We were all at the table, I think, right?
yeah, yep,
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that. Yep.
yep.
I remember
We were dealing with the mosquitoes that were biting us and a few other things, but I look at that experience as my rite of passage. That last night in the Sudan, when I spent time away from the rest facilities and everything, and you had to go and you had to go. So you went, you took something with you, and as
Mm-hmm.
you were walking away, the dung beetles were doing what they do. The
Mm-hmm.
right.
scarabs came out and were cleaning up. you know
Mhm.
that that to me, that was my rite of passage. That was me saying to myself, there's no doubt in my mind, I am an African.
Uh-huh.
I don't care what people say about being indigenous to America. You can have that conversation all
Uh-huh.
you want to. But as for me, African, okay? No
Yes.
Right,
shame here. No
Yes.
right.
shame here.
Yes.
That,
Sure enough,
that
sure
was
enough.
that was an
Yeah.
experience. The other
Yeah.
thing that I wanted to talk about was just the fact that when we were there were some political undertones that were taking place, and we were in that hotel, and there were two young men who came. And I'm like, I'm jazzed. These young folks, they're saying, hey, my brother from America, and we're connecting, and we're having the mantra of one love, one people, and we're talking about the impact that youth are having on the politics of that country. And Brother Runoko was like, hold that down. There are ears around here.
Mhm.
Don't talk too loud. I actually became Facebook friends with a couple of the brothers
Hmm.
who were over there, and I've heard from them within the past year. And they're still doing great things over there. But it was just, to know the young people had an interest in the politics of that country and they wanted to see change. And, I mean, it's not far from the reality of America.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
When things were changing in this country, it's because young folk were out on the
Mm-hmm.
forefront of that.
Mm-hmm.
You had the sit-ins at the diners down south, and you had the protests and the marches and whatnot. And it was the young folk that were out front because the old folks are, they got a Cadillac sitting in the garage. They don't want to lose it. you know, Young folk didn't have anything to lose and everything to gain.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
when you look at, for instance, what's happening in Burkina Faso, you got a 30 something that has
Mm-hmm.
taken control of this country and is turning things around and saying to the Europeans, no, you can't have our
That's
stuff anymore and not give us anything for it and then
uh,
sell it back to us and exploit us. Those days are over.
mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get too political, but I want to say that when the rest of the African leaders wake up to that mode of operation and understand that without Africa, the world comes to a stop.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mhm.
can't make your phones and your computers and your TV sets without what we have. When we take control of the resources of that continent, that's when we change the paradigm. That's when we stop being exploited. And that's when this whole picture of poverty that they try to push on Africa, you
Mm-hmm.
know, look, man, Europeans, when they take holiday, what they call holiday, which is vacation, guess where they go?
You know,
They come to Africa.
to the
And
motherland. Mhm.
and I hate to say this, but some of the brothers are taking advantage of the situations because the
Mm-hmm.
European women are coming there to get their groove back.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
They
Mm-hmm.
they they taking a chapter out of Stella's book, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then you got what they call the passport brothers. Brothers coming to Africa, to find love that they can't find in America and getting demonized by it. And I don't necessarily want to excuse them for that, but I will say that we have been brainwashed and bamboozled and pushed away from our own respective cultures. And as a result of that, it has created dysfunction in our relationships because we're not being authentically who we are. And if we can embrace our traditions, our cultural values, and understand the importance of family and understand the importance of marriage and the relationship between marriage and family, because that's another thing. On the continent, in many circles, that marriage is more than just a brother asking for a sister's hand in marriage. That is the coming together of two families. So when you come to that family and you ask for that daughter's hand in marriage, you got to understand that this is a business transaction. You can't come into that transaction with empty hands. So for instance, if you're in Kenya, you got to bring a couple of cows to the picture because the cow represents commerce. The cow represents you being able to do some things that will benefit that family. It's not as simple as you just, and in certain circles, it ain't just you coming and taking somebody's daughter. It's two families agreeing to this merger. So that woman is actually chosen for you so that this plan can be executed. It ain't like it is here. You got sisters. And again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of what's happening in the dysfunction of our relationships, but everybody chasing the bag. Folks that chasing bags that don't exist. You talking about you want a high value man, you want somebody that's making six figures. Do you know how many of us are making six figures? Not many. So if you got your heart set on a six-figure Negro, good luck with that. The most educated people in this country are sisters.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting when you speak of marriage? Sometimes we see marriage through the eyes of the Americans, which is entirely different than the eyes of Africa and other countries, where marriage is it's an agreement, but in Africa, marriage has developed so well that it actually allows you to have more than one wife in terms of the process, when the process is followed correctly. I remember asking the question in Sudan of, and the answer came back, as many wives as you can afford. But it meant more than just, the money coming out of your pocket, as you just mentioned. It was on so many other levels that this has to be completed, because you're bringing stability to all of these different parts of the family, But we see it through American eyes. We're caught up on just the simple fact that you got to give somebody a big diamond, and that's something that the bear folks, made up. That's in order to yeah.
Well, here's another thing that people don't understand about those arrangements, and that is many times it's the wife that chooses the other wife, not the man.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we always look
you
at
gotta get the okay.
Yeah, we look at these things and we think in terms of the sexual aspect of it.
Right.
But there's so much more to it than that. That's not the primary reason for that. It's really more about nation building. It's about family building. And again, these are cultural traditions that we have had for centuries.
And it works.
And it has worked.
And that reminds me of what ancestor Asa would always say is, we don't, so when it comes to the, polygamy or polyandry, whichever side of the coin it happens to fall on, we don't do any of those things simply because we're African. I mean, yes, that is a given there, but we do those things because, like you just said, they work. We use African common sense. in these matters, right? So what you were saying about us, we've internalized all these European hangups, culturally, psychologically, and even sexually speaking. We've adopted and internalized all these hangups. So now, again, we're balking at our own traditions. Again, things that have stood the test of time for centuries.
Yes.
For centuries. We
Right.
can't, you can't sit there and say that these traditions we've had, they lasted as long as they have, and then point your finger at them. Make any sense? That doesn't make any sense. But what Ancestor Asa said is true. They worked for us. So you got to use some common sense. If polygamy works in a situation where there's, more sisters than brothers, or more brothers and sisters, then you have, you do what makes sense, right? And the last thing I'll say on that is, when it comes to relationships between brothers and sisters, whether it's the intimate relationships, because I hate saying romantic, they can have their romance. We'll take our intimacy.
Good.
But whether it's the intimate ones or whether it's the, family relationships, love in the African sense takes time to build, like those pyramids took time to build. These aren't things that just happen in a flash. Sure, you could find a sister who's, outer wrappings you find very alluring. And of course, that's part of the attraction. That's part of the whole thing. But it's the growing together, the melding of those two African souls over time. You build that love like we built those pyramids. And like those pyramids, that relationship, that bond you build with that brother, that sister, will stand the test of time, just like those pyramids have.
Yes.
Just like those pyramids have.
Yeah.
But those things don't happen in a flash. Those are things that are built.
Yes.
Built.
And then there's the institution of marriage. We can look at the history of this country and see how things have changed. Back in the day, when you got married, it was till death do us part. And sometimes you endured some extraneous circumstances in order for that to work, but you made it work because the family was important. These days, if things ain't working, I'm out. And then you call the attorney, and then the attorney decides who gets what, and they take their cut. They walk away satisfied, and you walk away without a partner. And it's really all about the business arrangement, and it's not about the relationship. And I hate to bring up the baggage of things that happened in the past. I mean, what was the movie that Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah were in? The Color Purple.
Oh, Color Purple.
But that's not our complete reality.
No.
My parents were together for years until my father made transition. And as far as I know, that was the only woman that my father was ever with. And there are countless stories of people there. Just today, there was a funeral for a brother who was a fixture in the conscious community here in Cleveland, and he and his wife Norma Jean Freeman, Donald and Norma Jean Freeman, together for like 5-6 decades. And that's what our love is really all about. But that whole piece about being evenly yoked, you can't just marry anybody. That's the reason that the marriages don't work out, because people who weren't supposed to be together decided to get together. Oh, he cute. Oh, she's fine. Oh, she got a big booty or whatever. And then you marry somebody and find out that that's all they are, is a big booty. You wanted that, you got it, but you didn't get anything else. Same thing with the brothers. He had something that you liked, but he ain't just that. He's more than that, and you didn't get what you really wanted. So you have to make sure that you are with the right person when you want to make a commitment on that level, and that's what we have to do. So with the sisters, it's not about chasing the man with the money. It's about being with the person who fulfills you. It's about being complete and bringing your whole self into the relationship and not looking for someone to complete you. I think that's one of the other mistakes that we make when it comes to
Yeah.
relationships.
And there's a book out that a gentleman has a book out, and I'm trying to remember the title, but I believe the title says "Know Thyself," and it's important for you to know yourself before you can introduce that self to someone else. So the journey actually begins within.
Mm-hmm.
And once you are, some people may want to call it maturity or whatever it is, but I believe that there's a certain type of consciousness that takes place where you understand your strengths and your weaknesses and the areas that you need to work on, and your vulnerabilities. And when you know yourself, then you're able to look at someone else in a different light, where you want to know them, but at the same time understand that they are bringing some things to it. I deal with a lot of people, and they talk about trauma, and I tell folks this. I said I've had trauma since I was probably a 5-year-old kid. We can all look back on different parts of our life and say some of these events was traumatic. I didn't get what I want. I remember one year I wanted the suit for Easter, and I didn't get a suit for Easter, so I refused to do anything. Trauma, whatever for a kid. But I understood, that and these events do take place, but that's not something that I'm going to transfer over to anyone else. And we've all been in relationships, and whether they're up or down or whatever. And sometimes you meet someone that you think she is the right one, and then when you start to see all of the things that are going on the inside and the outside, you're like, you need to get some help, because you don't know who you are. And once you know who you are and you're comfortable who you are, then you can explore.
Yes. And to that point, it's really a matter of identity. And I think what we have missed for so many years is disconnection from our identity, and our culture ties us to our identity. So if they separate us from our culture, they separate us from our identity. And they do everything they can to keep us from knowing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So as you said, you go through life, you experience these traumas, you don't address those traumas, and you never really get to a point where you know who you are, and even more importantly, knowing why you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all are brought into this world to serve a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that purpose is what is applied to those who are around us. So when you serve your purpose, then you fulfill a need that someone else has, just like they fulfill a need that you have based on what their purpose is. It's an African principle. It's called Ubuntu.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We exist for the benefit of others, but they have effectively disconnected us in so many ways from even knowing what our purpose is, because we think that we exist to pay bills. The
So
sole
you have
purpose.
to find your purpose.
Find your purpose. And when you find your purpose and you live in your purpose, the bills will get taken care of.
Right. So when I say to you, where you from, or where your people from, and you say to me, your people are from South Carolina, I'm going to go, whoa. So you stop there, you haven't gone any further to find out where your heritage comes from. So if you ask me where my people come from, I can tell you they come from Gabon. I can tell you all of that information. I can trace it all the way back, because I want you to know that my history did not start here, and it's full of all of these great people someplace else. So that's part of me getting to know who I am, and anyone who's listening to this, I would encourage you to do the same thing, to find out who you really are,
right,
and stand on that principle,
And I don't want to exclude those of us who have indigenous roots to this country, because there are people who are indigenous to America. And, the trend is to disassociate from Africa if you're indigenous. But there's still a relationship, because Africans were the first people on the planet, and everybody is connected. So at some point or another, you have a relationship to what's over there, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. So I
And
don't,
nobody showed us that.
Well,
yeah, I don't want to.
from the psychological aspect of those things, brothers, look, I have yet, okay, and I've studied a lot of psychology, so that's kind of where I kind of veered off of the history path. But ancestor Asa or ancestor Amos Wilson kind of showed you how to bring psychology and history together as psychohistory, right? So that's kind of been how I've done this thing. But I've studied enough of it to know. I don't know everything. I'm no full expert on it, but I've studied enough to know it is impossible for two different cultures to reside in one being. It is just not possible. No one has been able to show me how an indigenous person, right, the consciousness of an indigenous person and that of an African coincide in the same body. No one has been able to prove that. It does not exist, right? And if you read the work of not just ancestor Bobby E. Wright, right, and the psychopathic racial personality, his work, the menticide work he did, and then that of it's escaping me the name now. Ancestor Kobe KK Cambone, who wrote African Black Psychology in the American Context, and he will tell you quite explicitly, with the evidence to show you why, that if you are an African in my place, for example, or in those Africans' places who have like an indigenous, heritage of sorts, right? Like Ancestor Runoko, talked about his, right? You must go with the African side. The African side will dominate in all regions. I'm not saying dominate in a negative sense, but it is the dominant side, the dominant consciousness, the dominant in terms of genetics, the dominant in sort of all of these different aspects. And he lays out very clearly why, if you're in that position, it's very clear you go with the African side of things, right? Now you make your choice whether it's going to be the indigenous or the African side. We're all grown folks in that matter, so you make your choice, right? You make your bed and sleep in it. But there has never been a case where somebody has been able to say, yeah, I'm Native African or Native American African or whatever. It doesn't make sense, because when you start asking them questions like, okay, well, what language do you speak then as a Native American African? What language is that? Is it a mixture of the two? What foods do you eat? Are you mixing the two? What do your clothes look like as a Native American African? What does that look like, right? So you notice that these brothers and sisters who are choosing the indigenous side, they're not associating at all with the African side of things at all. They're choosing a side. They're making a very clear choice that it is either this or it's that, because otherwise you end up schizophrenic. Schizophrenic. You can't have two of those things residing in one place. It just does not work. It's an impossibility.
I'm just remembering this whole idea that maybe I wasn't born in Africa, but Africa was born in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Brother Runoko would share that with us from time to time. And I think that's part of the reason that he was just so passionate about bringing this information to the public. So I'm just thankful that I had the opportunity to spend the time with him that I did, and I'm sure you feel the same way. So I want to thank you, brothers, for joining me tonight, and hopefully we did the subject some justice. I've got some homework to do, and Brother Kofi, you mentioned that you are in the process of looking to being a part of the motherland.
Oh yeah.
So I wish you success on that journey and setting up camp and getting yourself established over there. I know it's probably been perhaps kind of like a paradise over there where you are right now compared to where we are. Brother Robert is in Philadelphia. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's a little crazy, but I think the key is maintaining a certain level of peace amidst the chaos. And I think having a firm understanding of who and what you are will enable you to navigate any storms that we have to navigate. So, I close my broadcasts on 2 different radio stations and a television station with the same thing. Know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. And it's a real simple connection of a few different phrases, but they are so profound, because to know yourself, and I wrote a poem about this within the past year, to know yourself is to know God, because the self is the representation of God within your vessel. Real simple. Religion has been used to separate us from that understanding. And I'm making these statements in the presence of a pastor who is someone who is intimately tied to the biblical teachings. But I think one thing that has been missed in this whole paradigm is our understanding of the fact that God lives within us. And we want to separate ourselves from the God that lives within us, so that we externalize what God is. But God is out there and God is also in us. And I think it's really incumbent upon us to connect with that God that lives within us. And I'll let the Dr. Robert Harcum address those comments before we close.
I agree with you. Even earlier today, before I got online, I went out and I had libations on behalf of Dr. Runoko. I honestly do believe what you're saying is true. And I think that when it comes to religion, it's almost like watermelon with seeds. You have to know what to take in and what to spit out. Because a lot of what we have floating around here has been poisoned. Things have been put into there that should have never gone into there. But if you seek the wisdom of God, and the journey, you are right, begins within you, he's going to illuminate and he's going to show you what's right and what's wrong. I often tell people this. We were made to worship God. We were made in the image of him. When it comes to a lot of what you're hearing in churches, for example, that's not really for us. That's the sinner man stuff, all that other stuff, that whole thing of prosperity and all that other stuff. That's going to all fall apart. But if you take the journey for yourself, that's where you'll find the answers. And Word of God says, just let it be a lamp unto your feet, a light unto your pathway. Let the word illuminate you where you need to go, and you'll be fine. Yeah. I tell people this, and I tell people straight up, I'm a Black Christian. I'm an African Christian. I don't worship images or idols, and I've never seen the Christ or anyone as being white. Matter of fact, in the book that Runoko has, he has an image of one of the early images. He does the Madonna and Child, the African, you see the African Madonna and Child. But then he has an early image of Christ and the disciples being dark, Black people. And let's be real. If you follow the scripture, and if you are going to go into Egypt, to flee, and you're blending in with these people, you are looking like these people. Right.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that if what I was doing and if what I was saying and if my approach was wrong, I would be corrected, because all my life when I come off course, there's a hand that always brings me back into position where I should be. So that's my take on it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my take.
All right. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this. If you know anything about watermelon, you know that those seeds are actually good for you. So, don't spit the seeds out, chew them up, especially if you're a man. Especially for men.
But that was a metaphor, but I agree with you. Watermelon for men is, listen, I got one in the refrigerator right now.
Yeah. You just invoked memories of how we were served watermelon several times, and we always look forward to it. And watermelon is also something that you're supposed to eat by itself. Because it's like 90% water. So when you eat when you eat watermelon, you're not supposed to eat it with other fruits. You're supposed to eat it by itself as a meal. But we had some good watermelon over there. I will tell you that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The food, even when we were in Khartoum in Sudan, and we were like at a restaurant not too far from where the White and the Blue Nile met,
Mm-hmm.
and we did lunch there. And I'm a chicken eater. And I had some of the best chicken I had in my life, you know. And
Yeah.
it wasn't these big old fat things. They were, you know. And I don't. Do you remember the one lady who we were traveling somewhere and we had lunch and she was making bread, and she
Yeah.
was hot bread, and we were getting the fresh bread. Brother, that was good. Good
I
food.
remember that day quite vividly. You
Yes.
know, we had some interesting experiences over there, and that was one of those off days that I had. You guys were enjoying that food. I wasn't really feeling well. I think what happened is when we were on that cruise ship, I
Mm-hmm.
picked up some kind of germ.
Mm.
And so I was wrestling with that for the balance of the trip. So the trip, you know, it was a challenge because I wasn't 100% in terms of my health. You
Yeah.
know, as a matter of fact, I came back from Egypt into Sudan, and within 2 weeks, I was in the Dominican Republic on vacation.
Yeah.
So I had to go on a vacation to recover from my trip. And
Mm-hmm.
while I was in the Dominican Republic, I was at an all-inclusive resort. I gained 12 pounds in a week.
Ooh.
And so I had to recover from that experience. So I'm happy to say that I'm on the mend, but you know, this was right on the edge of the pandemic
Uh-huh.
because we were over in the Sudan in November.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Egypt, I think the last part of October, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the pandemic hit almost immediately coming back here.
Yeah, right at the
Immediately
end. Yeah.
Shut down. Yeah.
coming back.
Mhm.
So I have some ideas about what happened because I honestly think that some of those germs that were supposed to have been in Wuhan,
Mm-hmm.
I think they got out beforehand. And
Oh,
and
brother, they
I
did. They
and I
they
and
did.
I know that the cruise ship that we were on had a lot of Chinese folk on it.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Well,
yeah.
here's the thing. So there was a because I think I must have read. So during the and I don't call it a pandemic. I call it a planned-demic
I
because
meant
it
to
was
say
planned.
that, but I didn't want to.
It was planned
Thank
because
you.
if you read a little something about what they call Event 201, Event 201. This was a like an outbreak simulation that was done back in 2016.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates, their foundation was involved in this. And the simulation involved a coronavirus.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But there was a research report that came out, and it was out of Italy, I want to say. I think back in 2018 or 2017. And they were doing a study on some lung cancer patients. You want to take a guess what they discovered?
No
COVID.
idea.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
COVID. SARS-CoV-2 in 2018, a year
Mm.
before the actual outbreak. So
Mm.
this was prior to them blaming it on Wuhan, which it may have come from there. Who knows? But I do know that it was out before the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic started, or pandemic started in 2019. It was out there before. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I must have gone through 300 or 400 articles in that 3-4 year period
Mm.
Yeah.
of reading up on this here and then listening to lectures on it. Like it was a mess. And then vaccines on top of it, man. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, it's a subject that I'm really reluctant to get too deep into the weeds because I've received a few communications from our friends over YouTube. So
Oh
I'm
yeah,
re-
yeah, of course, yeah.
I'm really deliberate in what I say about it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh yeah.
you know, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of information that has been uncovered. There's a lot of information that's in the public domain. There have been Senate hearings and all kinds of things where they've come out and they've said certain things. And, you know, and despite that, they're still pushing the jab. I don't understand that.
Oh,
If
of
we know
course.
what we know
Yeah.
about it, You know, why would I want to go to Walgreens and get something with that kind of a history?
Mhm.
But you know,
Well,
but
it has none. That
yeah,
technology has
yeah,
zero
right.
history.
But the agenda is the agenda, and the most
Mhm.
populous people on this planet are us.
Yes.
Yep.
And if your agenda is reducing population, then you're going to do what you think you have to do, you know. But
What better way to do it?
what
Mhm.
better way to do it? And again, the documents are there for those who want to explore those things. If you want to find out the truth, it's
Mhm.
there. But the most important thing, to just get back to who we are,
Yeah,
is that we live in our purpose and we carry out the instructions that we receive from the ancestors.
that's right.
You know,
Shay.
and as we do that, things will continue to improve for us because it is their will.
Hmm. And we will one day become ancestors ourselves,
Exactly.
The
and
work
on our
continues.
shoulders, people will stand. They will
Yes.
remember the words that you said. They will go back through, I don't know if there'll be videos or however they'll be back then, and they'll hear and listen and use it as a source of inspiration and taking it to
Absolutely.
the next level. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Before we sign off, I just wanted to acknowledge Tavares Adams, who has been checking us out. Probably on YouTube. There are a few folks who are with us right now. So I'm grateful to you. I hope that this will be an impetus for you to subscribe to this channel, because we will do this again and we'll bring other information and content to you that will be edifying for you. So thank you for joining us. And thank you, Robert, for initiating this. You know, there were other folks who wanted to join us tonight for whatever reason they couldn't, but we're gonna keep inviting them to the table because we want to hear their experiences as well. And
Absolutely.
and I will make sure that we share this broadcast with them so that they can see what they missed.
Excellent.
All right. So again, thanks for joining me, and I'll say, as I always do in parting, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and to that, make today your best day. Peace, everyone.
Thank you. Hmm.
Shay.
Okay.
Peace.
Kofi, if there's ever anything that I can do for you, always reach out to me. Okay.
Oh, no doubt, brother.
Okay.
Always
Okay.
goes both ways now.
All right.
Goes both
Okay.
ways.
All right.
Same to you, Vince.